Dr. Judith Reisman, Principal Investigator for the Department of Justice on Child Abuse Pornography. Here's a little biographical profile, Doug Oldham. It's amazing. Judith A. Reisman, Institute President, born Hillside, New Jersey, I won't say when. Master's, MA from Case Western Reserve University, PhD from Case Western Reserve University, and on the list goes. And what I want to ask you, Dr. Reisman, is how in the world did you get involved in child abuse and pornography?
Well, actually, Dr. Falwell, it really began in this type of setup. I was doing a course on television production at Case Western Reserve, and one of the students was filming pornography.
At the school?
At the school, that's right. He wasn't using live models. What he was doing is using visuals, graphics, and they were shooting the graphics. And they were taken from Playboy, Penthouse, various other kinds of magazines. And I walked in the room and I saw on the monitor very clearly sexually explicit material. And this was a required course, and the young girls were doing the camera work, and the director was a young woman. That blew your mind, didn't it? It certainly did. And I went to the professor, who happened to be a user of this material, I found out later, and I said, this is a required course. This is Case Western Reserve University. This is pornography. You know, why are you permitting this type of filming to take place?
So you didn't ask for the job. You just saw the problem and,
exactly.
and jumped into it.
Well, and the really interesting part of it was that it turned out that all these young women denied that the material bothered them. They completely denied it. But later, when we did a playback of the videos, that particular video was almost blank half the time. So that the young women who were doing the photographing, the camera work, the direction, refused to look at the monitor. Nothing came up on the screen. Do you see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So you had a nonverbal response, mm-hmm. and yet the verbal response was something else. They yes. claimed it didn't bother them, but when they had to shoot it, they wouldn't look at it, so it wasn't up on the screen. Yes.
What happened next?
Well, I decided to check that out. I thought, good heavens, if that's going on with these young women who are reasonably liberal, you know, people, mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on in the bedrooms in this country, mm-hmm. if you will, or between boys and girls or men and women. And so I started investigating, doing some experimental research and so forth, then did a lot of questionnaires, asking people about how they felt, and ended up kind of winding my way into a content analysis of Playboy and Penthouse, but particularly Playboy, because that was what was being read by so many of the boys on campus and their fathers, and it was so acceptable. And did some other research on Alfred Kinsey, and ended up doing a project for the federal government, doing a content analysis actually of Playboy and Penthouse and Hustler.
I've read that report, and yeah. it is unbelievable. You know, I thought I was a fairly mature adult and had been most places once. But we're not talking about stuff that you buy illegally. We're talking about yeah. materials in the supermarket, on mm-hmm. the counter, at mm-hmm. the eye level yeah. of children.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can buy it without restriction.
Yeah, exactly. That's the big problem.
The three magazines you studied primarily were?
Playboy, Penthouse, and Hustler. And let me make it really, really very, very clear. There was nothing in Hustler, of course Hustler was much more graphic and colorful, if you will, but there was nothing in there except the emphasis on abortion that didn't proceed in Playboy, mm-hmm. and that wasn't followed by Penthouse. So
what you're saying is that while probably Playboy and Penthouse would say we're not in the same league with Hustler, yeah. you found that in fact they are in the same league.
Objectively, statistically, looking at the research results, absolutely.
You got with our television people earlier today, and you put together just a few things. We can't show most of the study on television. Yeah. We wouldn't do it for one thing, and absolutely. If we did do it, the stations out there would properly not allow it to be aired.
Right.
But we've done a little editing here, and you can just describe for us what we're going to put on the screen right
sure.
now.
That's a cartoon that shows the father sexually abusing his not little girl, probably a 13 or 14-year-old girl. What's very interesting is the way the material usually overdevelops the bust on the children. This is in Playboy as well, and keeps a younger face on the body. So there's a lot of blurring.
There's Daddy mm-hmm. and his little girl.
Little girl. I'd like to go with you, but my dad has extra chores for me tonight. And in the depiction,
and you
it's
find
very
this in
graphic.
Playboy, this type thing in Playboy
oh,
as
yes.
well as Hustler,
absolutely.
Penthouse. this?
Absolutely. It began in Playboy with the cartoon.
What's this?
This is, again, a depiction of abortion out of Hustler. Now, that's the one thing that Playboy hasn't done at all to any great extent, was to...
Wait a minute, they're hanging behind the car there. Those fetuses? Those are fetuses.
Yes, yes.
Dragging behind. Doug, I just noticed what that was.
Yeah, that is
Those are
supposed to be a
human
joke.
babies. A joke, dragging behind a just man, which means there had been 5 abortions before they got married.
And you have to understand, this is in full color in the magazine, so that the colors are reds and very, very graphic, very violent, very brutal, very much a...
Now, what do we have here?
This is a little girl going down a slide. Her legs in the picture are wide open, the skirt is up, and a man lying under the slide, and I won't go into details as to how...
A child molester?
Yes, yes. And this, by the way, is called Chester the Molester. Again, this is a joke.
Supposed to be funny.
Yes, and the important thing here is that a large percentage of our cartoons we didn't do just cartoons, as you know, but it's more difficult to show the photographs because they're, of course, much more revealing in a sense than the cartoons are.
You know, this morning we spent a great deal of time trying to find ones that, even with editing like this, we could put on television. And I think 10% of them were even airworthy with all the editing, and this, in my opinion, is very borderline.
Yeah, well, Reverend Falwell, one of the big problems here, of course, is that you can't address this problem in using First Amendment rights. You can't address it with people because you can't show it, and you don't really want to show it.
That's right. Now here is Chester the Molester again.
Right, and he is kidnapped. And of course, you know that we have children kidnapped all over this country.
It says it's 11 o'clock. You know where your children are.
And he's got them tied up, and it's a very graphic picture. You blocked that out. But there is no question that we're talking about kidnapping children. We're talking about torturing them. We're talking about having violent sexual interaction with these children. And this, again, is considered to be a joke and is regarded as a joke by the juveniles who read it and the adults.
Here's a little child. Again,
this is Penthouse. She's called Baby Breeze, which is, again, very important because the name is given to her by the magazine.
She's nude from her shirt down.
She's definitely nude. The other pictures, this is part of about 15 photographs of this young girl. The other pictures are even more graphic.
Now this is Penthouse here.
This is Penthouse.
You know, I've been on debate shows with people from Playboy. I've been on with Bob Guccione. Guccione always, all Falwell, you fanatics out there. And said, our magazine contains journalism. I remember I told him once on McNeil Lair, I said, Bob, going to Penthouse magazine for journalism is like going to the city dump to buy your groceries.
Precisely. And I'm afraid the same thing is true of Playboy. For example, I saw a few of the pictures that you couldn't put up there that were photographs. Those were from Playboy. Young girl chained to the bed. Okay, that was a Playboy picture. We had another one with a little girl with pigtails from Playboy, right? And with the caption, which was strictly incest, okay? And that was from Playboy. And we've recently had, Playboy has finally admitted about 2-3 weeks ago, when our little report has gone out all over the country, and various, as far as I understand it, approximately 520 stores have stopped selling Playboy and Penthouse within the last 3 or 4 weeks since they got this little report. Yeah.
25,000 retail stores the last 8 years have stopped selling all this porn.
Right.
But your report now has brought another 500.
At least. And the Southland letter, by the way, that indicated it was dropping the sales of Playboy did specifically refer to our report at that time. So just now, Playboy has admitted that they have used children in their magazine.
Do you have to travel with security? Well, you don't want to comment publicly, but let me ask you this. Have there been reasons to be concerned about your welfare since these reports have been done?
Oh, yes, yes. And certainly my financial welfare, too, as well.
You've been fired a couple of places.
Oh, it's been very difficult.
Run out of one major university.
Yeah, been
completely run out.
Right.
Out of a major university in the Washington area. Of course, they would deny why.
Well, yeah, but there's a lot of financial interest that has been identified there.
You know, I've just selected findings. This is your report here.
Right.
And you went through, you were able to develop in child depictions 2,971 photographs, 2,016 cartoons, 1,017 illustrations in those 3 magazines.
Yeah.
In adult crime and violence depictions, 6,273 photographs, 5,338 cartoons, 3,243 illustrations, and then it goes on down to list the principal child, the other characters, the victims, the offenders, sample child depictions. This was done for the Department of Justice. Now, it has been delivered to the Department of Justice, and I would assume that the wonderful Department of Justice would by now have done something wonderful about it.
Yes, well, that's what I would have assumed. But the fact is that the Department of Justice has just recently issued, first of all, they blocked the publication of the report consistently. They claimed that
Justice Department.
The Justice Department. Now, they claim that the peers, our academic peers, didn't approve it. We proved that the academic peers did approve it. All of their statements and their critiques were included. So then we thought that that problem was solved. Just recently, I think this last month, a memo went out.
In my hand.
Thank you.
Let me read this memo. It is unbelievable. It's on the screen there, but I'm going to read it to you. It was a memo distributed to the various divisional managers in the Justice Department responsible for reviewing this study.
Right.
Please be advised that I have received a memorandum from Charles A. Lauer, General Counsel, regarding the report Images of Children, Crime and Violence in Playboy, Penthouse, and Hustler magazines, executive summary, that was recently received in the office. That's your study.
Yes.
Please review the following relevant portions of the memo from the Office of General Counsel and notify all of your staff immediately. Then there's a list of, there's a writing of the law that says this is all illegal stuff.
Yes.
And here's the bottom line, the last paragraph. Please advise all staff that this report should not be duplicated or sent through the mails, because the previous two paragraphs quote the section, the law that says this is, to print or distribute this is a crime.
Yes.
Now, if it's a crime for the Justice Department managers to distribute this, why is it not a crime for Guccione, Hefner, and Flint to distribute it?
That's a very good question, because they are referring specifically to the fact that we found child pornography. Young people under the age of 18. Now, the Attorney General, by the way, had requested that 21 be the age cap for anyone who is allowed to pose nude in these materials, and that was dropped down to age 18, which means that children only to 17 legally are now protected. The rest are open for sexual exploitation.
To the Attorney General's credit, he in fact called for and led a terrific investigation on pornography. But it would seem like that there are forces beneath him that are very powerful.
Very powerful, incredibly powerful, because what we see here is a federal report that identifies child pornography, and its researcher, are identified as having done something illegal, while the people who produce the material, make the profit on the material, are continue to do what they've been doing and are not prosecuted. Playboy, Penthouse, these people are not prosecuted.
Is there a connection? You've done a very much in-depth study. A connection between child porn and child abuse?
Oh, there's no question about that. The only question we have is statistically how much, and that's something one can never establish, really. But as far as the connection, we have not only case after case of individual situation in which a child is being sexually abused and the abuser has in his possession the material, and is acting out the material. So not only do we have that, but John Rabin of the Missing and Exploited Children's Center has identified specific percentages. I think we went up to, he was talking about 75% of the offenders in a large study that they conducted in Kentucky had in their possession at the time of the abuse of the child pornography.
You're already in trouble, so let me ask you a loaded question.
Why not?
Why would the Justice Department be attempting to squelch this report and refusing to act upon it?
Well, it is my opinion at this point in time, I can't fight this any longer. It is my opinion that there is a very strong, very powerful sex industry lobby which is having its way in the Department of Justice.
Could that have anything to do with the effort to force Mr. Meese out of the Justice Department?
It certainly could have. It certainly could have. I would argue that someone is giving him disastrous advice, that people working directly under him are also working with other people who are not interested in the same agenda that Attorney General.
Because the Attorney General has led a forceful charge against the pornographers, and they are suing him, and they hate him. And I don't know, I was just wondering as I was reading your report one day if there was a connection between the campaign against Ed Meese and the Judith Reisman report.
Well, I don't think that it's even just the Judith Reisman report. There have been other kinds of things that have happened underneath him that I think are very clearly a sign of one forceful group within the Justice Department which is battling the Attorney General's agenda.
Dr. Reisman, is it possible for just anybody to get a copy of your report?
Yes, certainly.
How would they do that?
Certainly. They would simply write to us at the Institute for Media Education.
Let's see if I can find the address here. We'll put it up a little bit later.
Okay.
That address is Post Office Box. The Institute, here we are, the Institute for Media Education, Post Office Box 7404, Arlington, Virginia 22207, and we'll have it on the screen in just a moment. And you've got to personally send that out, so they would need to send what along to help?
$2.
A couple of dollars to cover the cost.
Anything else they might want to send is always cheerfully accepted.
Cheerfully. You know, what they don't know is that you absolutely were thrown out because of this report, and nobody at the university where you were working is willing to admit why suddenly a quality professor and is no longer employed there.
Yeah, we've had a little difficulty with that. In particular, by the way, one of their major professors, Arnold Trebach, who is with their School of Justice, has been a member of the Board of Directors for NORML, National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, which is the Playboy-funded pro-marijuana legalization structure. He's been on the board with them for, I think, since the mid-70s. We had another professor who was the head of the Department of Psychology who was arrested for sexually abusing a 9-year-old in his trailer at a nudist colony, and who seems to be well instated there. They don't have a problem.
We're talking about a university in the United States of America.
Yes, we certainly are. And a lot of other kinds of very unusual financial connections that have followed my leaving that university. They seem to have done quite well financially subsequent to that.
And we're not talking about Case Western Reserve.
No, this is not Case.
Real clear.
No.
With all that said, the address is on the screen. If you'll send $2, I would recommend you send $5.